Hello everyone. Today I'm going to talk about the media framing of the Rohingya refugees. Close your eyes and just for a moment imagine this. One day you are forced to leave your home, the place where you grew up, the place where you made a lot of memories. Yeah, you are forced to leave that place. And you don't know if you'll ever come back. Well, behind you there is fear, loss and violence. In front of you there is uncertainty. This is not a movie scene from any movies, but this is the real life scenario for the Rohingya refugees. But when we learn about their story, we do not see what's the reality. We only see what media chooses to show us. Why I said this? Just think of it. The news media, all the newspaper headlines and all the TV newses and the videos and images of the crying children of the camp. These are the things that emotionally move us, I know. But these are also the things that the media is wanting to show us. This is where the framing theory becomes important. Framing theory talks about how the media does not simply report to reality, but it selects parts of reality and presents to us in a way that gives us a frame, a certain perspective which they want us to see through. Well, it's like a window through which we see the world. The Rohingya crisis, it can be framed in many ways. Well, it can be shown as a humanitarian tragedy, as a security threat, as a political issue, and also it can be shown as a burden on resources. Every frame gives us a different perspective. We have to keep in mind whenever we are seeing their story, we are not seeing the full story. Some voices are loud, but some, they just disappear. So today, we are not only discussing what the national and international media say about Rohingyas, we are also asking what lies beyond those frames, what the government and NGOs are doing for these people. And is there any future, or is there any kind of future possible for the people who have already lost so much? Now, let us begin with the role of our national media.
National media, print and electronics. In Bangladesh, the national media has played a very important part in informing the public about the Rohingya crisis. Through newspapers, online news and television, the sufferings of Rohingyas have reached homes across the country. We have seen families arriving with nothing, we have seen children standing in the mud, and we have seen mothers without any hope. Print media often focuses on numbers, statistics and national concerns. It reports on the pressure on lands, jobs and forest and local communities in Cox's Bazar. These are real and serious issues. Bangladesh has carried a heavy responsibility. But when reports mainly focus on burden and problems, Rohingyas can begin to look less like people and more like a problem. Electronic media adds emotions through visuals. On television and online platforms, the camps appear crowded, fragile and painful. We see rows of shelters under the rain, smoke rising from cooking fires, and long lines for aid. These images are very powerful, but they only repeat one part of the story, the part about crisis and helplessness. What we always do not see are the quieter truth. We often do not see a father trying to save his family's dignity. We do not see the girl who still wants an education. We often do not see the people trying to build a sense of life in this uncertainty. Our national media helps us understand the scale of this crisis, but sometimes it frames the Rohingyas mainly through the lens of national impact. And when this happens, empathy can become smaller. Now, let's see how international media frames the same reality.
International media, print and electronics. International media often tells the Rohingya story in a very different voice. In global newspapers, magazines, and reports, this crisis is usually framed as a human rights disaster. The focus is on persecution, global displacement, statelessness, and mass violence. This has helped the world recognize the seriousness of what happened. Print media at the international level often uses strong and painful language. It speaks of atrocities, ethnic cleansing, and crimes against humanity. However, these words are important because they give weight to the suffering. This reminds the world that this is not just a refugee issue, but a justice issue. Electronic international media often goes deeper into the emotions. Documentaries, interviews, and visual reports bring us face to face with the human pain. We hear trembling voices, we see tears, scars, grief, and silence. But these stories can create compassion across borders. They remind the world that behind every statistic is a life. But international media also has its limits. Sometimes it only pays attention when the suffering is dramatic, fresh, and it's really hard to ignore. Because when the cameras leave, the pain does not leave. The camps remain, the uncertainty remains, the waiting remains. Another problem is that the international media can turn the Rohingyas into symbols of sufferings only. And that is when their humanity becomes reduced to tragedy. And although international media brings global attention, but it can also create a frame that is emotional but incomplete. However, beyond all the reporting and framing, we have to ask one question: what is being done?
Beyond the frame, the complex reality of Rohingya camps. When we see the Rohingya crisis in the media, we are often shown one dominant image: suffering. We see overcrowded camps, helpless faces, and stories of extreme hardship. And while this is not false, it is also not the full truth. Because reality, as I experienced, it is not black and white, it is grey. During my visit in the Cox's Bazar refugee camps, I expected to see only despair. But what I found was something more complex. Yes, there is hardship, but there is also adaptation. I saw small grocery shops, tea stalls, tailoring services, and even handmade jewelry shops. I saw people working, trading, and trying to rebuild a sense of normal life. This is what we call informal economy, a survival system created by people who have almost nothing yet refuse to give up. So, the question is, if people are doing business, does that mean they are doing well? Not really. These businesses with very low profit, there is little capital and strict limitations on movement and opportunity. This is not growth, this is survival. Another common perception is they are getting food, so they are okay. Yes, food is distributed regularly, but the reality is the support is limited. So we can say this clearly: they are not starving, but they are not really living either. From the outside, the camps may look organized, but inside the reality is different. Overcrowded shelters, sanitization challenges, and uncertain futures. Now let's talk about NGOs. They provide food, healthcare, education, clean water, and emergency support. Without them, the system would be struggle to function. But NGOs also face challenges, limited funding and resources. They can reduce suffering, but they cannot end the crisis. There are two common ideas. One says Rohingyas are helpless victims, and another says they are doing fine. But both are incomplete. The truth lies in between. They are not just victims, they are survivors. But they are not thriving, they are surviving. So we must ask, are we seeing reality or just a version of it? To truly understand, we must look beyond the frame.
When we talk about the future of Rohingyas, the answer is still heartbreaking. Their future is still uncertain. Many hope for the repatriation to Myanmar, but the return cannot be all set unless their security, dignity, and citizenship is secured. Without those things, the return is not a solution. It is a repetition of fear. Some speaks of long-term settlement in Bangladesh, but this raises difficult questions on social, economic, and political questions. Bangladesh has shown humanity, but it cannot be expected to carry this responsibility alone forever. This is where we must think about reality beyond the frame. Beyond the headlines, beyond the camp images, beyond the political speeches, there are human beings waiting to belong, waiting to be safe, waiting to be more than refugees. The Rohingyas are not just victims. They are parents, children, workers, storytellers, and lastly, they are survivors. They do not only need food, they need rights. They do not only need sympathy, they need justice. So, why does framing matter? Because the way we tell a story, the way the world responds to it, if the Rohingyas are framed as only as burden, people will look for ways to contain them. If they are framed only as helpless victims, people may feel pity but not responsibility. But if they are seen as human beings whose rights have been stolen, the conversation changes. Then justice becomes necessary. But today, as we end, let us remember this. A frame can create an image, but it can also hide truths. The media can give voice, but it can also silence. But our duty is not just to watch, but to look deeper. The Rohingya crisis is not only a story of loss, but it is also a test of our humanity. The question is not just what happened to them. The question is, what kind of world allows it to continue? Thank you.